was a commonwealth of Britain.
Yeah.
So understand that Canada was also a commonwealth, so the Indians thought that they were going to be allowed to move from one commonwealth land to another, but they were wrong, so they were stuck on water.
So did everyone hear that? So basically what happened was there was a ship of Indian migrants who Canada, British Columbia specifically said, weren't allowed entry. So what happened was practically no one from the ship was allowed to come into Canada. The ship went back to India. Most of the people who were on that ship died because the British colonialists shot them, right? So again, this shows that when it comes to racial preferences for Canadian immigration policy, that has historically been the case. So a bunch of you might have seen this poster a while ago. Did you guys see this? This was circulated last summer. What does this poster say? So, okay, first of all, what's this image supposed to evoke? And it says under, is this really what you want? Let's just be honest here. What ideas is this pamphlet trying to impart?
Civilized whiteness versus racialized other, and community changing.
So can you unpack that? What do you mean by civilized whiteness versus community others?
Well, it's trying to other the people on the bottom, and it's trying to make a preference for what's on top as some kind of polite whatever.
Yeah.
And it's showing people that are actually protesting something, it seems, instead of a group photo. So that's like unfair. That's a biased kind of thing that people have said. So it's asking if you want the top or the bottom, and that to work with them to maintain the top.
Perfect. I think there was something there. Okay, so it's basically as was said, showing this used to be Canada, now it's becoming like this, and because it's becoming like this, Canadians should worry because people of color are taking over. And don't go to the website because it's actually really upsetting, but it was circulated by this group called Immigration Watch Canada, right? Yes?
And they're actually like fairly well organized. Like they did a blockade of the highway last summer.
Where was this blockade?
In Toronto, like of the Don Valley. And they also, I think that's actually where that picture's from, when we did a protest around the 4 and 4 at Canada Immigration, they had a counter-protest across the street.
So, I mean, there's definitely anti-immigrant sentiments that are still present today, and there are organized groups that are present today, right? Okay, this is another pop quiz. So this picture, well, first of all, Stop Harper's TFWP, Canadian Jobs for Canadians. When they say Canadian Job for Canadians, what are they trying to say? And this was taken in Alberta, in Edmonton, where I've been living for the last 2 years. Canadian Jobs for Canadians means?
We take away their job.
So we, as immigrants, are taking away those jobs, right? Canadian jobs. Yes, is that there?
Who are the Canadians anyway? Because Canada is a mixture of culture, and it's so frustrating and devastating to feel to be left out because they were immigrants too. They were just whiter, but makikilos naman tayo. That's just on the side, but it's just the color, like this picture on the left or on our left on Radyo Federal is really degrading because the people have all the nice clothing versus the culturalized or the Indians or the street, and it's not it's very bad to see.
So I mean, I think what you're saying is correct too. Like when do we stop being racialized others, right? Even if we have Canadian immigration status, people are still scapegoated as stealing jobs, even though we're validly supposed to be working here and living here, right? So as this exercise shows, and I'm not going over this timeline in great detail, when you look at the history of caregiving and temporary foreign work in Canada, what strikes me in my research is that there are two immigration streams, right? On the one hand, you've got British and Irish women who were able to come into Canada as permanent residents because they were seen as nursemaids and thus natural mothers of the nation, right? But on the other hand, women of color have to come in through streams Caribbean domestic scheme in order to only come here and work here temporarily. The difference between the two is if you look at the way they're depicted, British and Irish women are seen as the natural mothers of the nation and thus can avail of Canadian citizenship, whereas Caribbean women, if you look at the documents, are seen as slaves, right, and thus aren't deserving of citizenship when it comes to Canada. One point I wish to make, though, and I've highlighted it, is that when you look at domestic workers and caregivers' ability to get permanent residency in the first place, that only took place because caregivers fought for it, right? It used to be that women of color had to come in through the Non-Immigrant Employment Authorization Program, which basically said that you could only come here for time-limited contracts, right? What happened was in the 1970s, in the late 1970s, a group of women who were called the Seven Jamaican Mothers, who came here as domestic workers, protested and said, why is there this racial discrepancy, right? Why is it that Irish and British women could get permanent residency still working the same jobs, whereas black women couldn't, right? So it was only through protesting that the right to get permanent residency only became possible for domestic workers. However, as we all know, this came with a catch, right? Domestic workers didn't automatically get permanent residency. They had to, what are some of the requirements in the old program and also under the Living Caregiver program the caregivers had to fulfill? We all know this. So to get permanent residency, what do you have to do if you're a caregiver?
You have to complete 24 months
You have to complete 24 months of,
before you apply for permanent.
before you can apply for permanent residency. You have to live and work
You have to work for one employer for 24 months.
before you can apply for permanent residency. Yeah, absolutely. When it came to, can you live with your families when you come here?
No.
No, so what happens then? So you have to live with your employer, and at the end of your 2 years, if you have children and a partner, that's the only time you can apply for permanent residency for them, right?
And it takes a long time.
What's the average length of time, do we know anecdotally, for these papers to get processed?
On the CIC website, it's saying 3 years right now.
3 years?
But in reality, I don't think it's 3 years. It's more than.
3 to
it's more
5.
than that. Yeah, it's more than
Yeah,
that.
three is only, it's
That's what they're saying.
That's what they say.
Yeah, that's what you
So yeah, I mean, there's all of these different numbers. But what happens when you're separated from your children and your families, right? What are some of the pains and some of the hardships people go through? And that's something that Anak Bayan and other migrant activist groups have been seeing. Extended periods of family separation really hurt the family, right? And what happens when you reunify? That's where you have a lot of experiences of family fighting, right? There's a lot of experiences of alienation as well. And that's something a lot of migrant activist groups are fighting against, right? So the only point I wish to make is that when it comes to Canadian immigration policy, there are racial double standards. Why is it that people of color and communities of color do not have access to Canadian citizenship when other groups that are deemed better for Canada, that are naturally part of Canada, can get access to citizenship, right? So number one, there's that racial double standard. Number two, however, as I said, when it comes to improvements to Canadian immigration policy, that only occurred because the people fought for it, right? And that's true for caregivers. When it comes to other changes, and I'll go over that at the end of my presentation, what's important to bear in mind is that, you know, from 2002 onwards, now we're seeing a different immigration landscape, right? Now we're seeing that when it comes to the caregiver program, you no longer have automatic access to permanent residency. Not that it was automatic in the first place, right? When it comes to the temporary foreign worker program, even then, there are now greater restrictions when it comes to temporary foreign workers. So in 2011, the 4-year in and 4-year out rule was introduced. So what is this rule for temporary foreign workers? We're all, again, really familiar with this. When they say 4-year in, 4-year out, what does that mean?
You would work here 4 years.
Go
You
on.
would go home, stay there for 4 years, then you can come back for another 4 years.
Perfect, that's great. So is that what's happening in reality though?
Probably. That's what I read in the newspaper. They were sent to the Philippines, to their respective places.
Okay, we'll unpack that a little bit because I have some results based on studies we've done in Alberta of the effects of these policy changes. So when it comes to the changes from 2014 onwards, what I wish to say is that it's really time for us to act because all of these changes are taking place and have become law, and it has negative effects on migrant communities, right? So again, looking at migrant activism and how improvements are made through migrant activism, another pop quiz. Who is this?
Juana Tejada.
And who is Juana Tejada?
She's another caregiver who had cancer, and she was diagnosed with a cancer on her second medical examination, and she was refused for landed status. But she asked Filipino community for help para lang maka-stay siya. And that's where Migrante Canada and other Filipino organizations stood up para tulungan si Juana Tejada.